What's up, everyone? This is Rob Shapiro, the No BS Crypto Guy, coming at you today about today's October the 7th, 2021, and I wanted to discuss with you something I came across about a week ago in my research for what's happening in the current environment, given that we recently had several days drop in the stock markets, American stock markets. If you have paid attention to that, actually, as a matter of fact, let me kind of show you what that looks like because it's highly unusual. Given our environment where they have been printing money like crazy, you can see on this chart right here, this is a chart of the NASDAQ 100 E-mini futures, so it's a representation of the NASDAQ market, but in the commodities market. I like this because actually the commodity futures tend to actually lead the stock market, meaning that you'll see these move and precede the stock market openings the same day. So I think this is a really good, I feel like this is a really good representation of the market, especially in the tech industry. And you'll see that going back to the crash that started in March of 2020 over here, let me pull this out, that the market had topped at about 97.63 in this particular this future right here, right? And then plummeted down to about 7,000 roughly, give or take a few points. And then the government started printing like crazy and bailed the market out, did stimulus, and you can see all of these green bars, little periods of retracement, nothing major, but just so many days, weeks, literally, of up action with very little downside. And so if we come here to our current, we see this retracement going on. Now, what I want to point out to you guys, I want you to come down and look at this indicator right here. So this is a MACD indicator, but what I do is I use a little bit of different settings on this than the normal. The normal is like 9, 12, 26. I try to smooth this out. This has actually become a very good indicator for timing market tops and bottoms. It lags a tad, but it's pretty darn close. Like, it'll help you hedge yourself. At least you'll retain 90 to 95% of your gains if you use this to time market tops and bottoms. So what I want you to see is, okay, so back here, if we go back to this drop, right, and we look at where it started here, it actually caught this drop right about at this point. So from the market top of 9,800, it caught it at about 91, maybe a little bit lower. So and then of course, like I said, it bottomed out at it bottomed out at 66, 67. So you would have retained a good portion of your earnings had you just followed this, right? But quite honestly, you wouldn't have just done that. You would have looked at the fact that you went from all these green bars to all of a sudden you're in a red bar, right? That would have been like your first clue. And you would have seen this indicator. You would have seen this indicator turn over the faster moving average. You would have seen it turning over, and then of course once it goes under the slower moving average, that's confirmation that you're moving, that your cycle is changing, that you're going from a bull trend to a bear trend. But then again, we come down here and we see this reversal, this sudden reversal. We get compression in the Japanese candlesticks. We get this doji right here, and then we get these bullish, these bull candlestick bars going up from that point. And then you see again, crosses over. You would have gotten back in the market somewhere between here and here, and you would have ridden this wave all the way up, paying attention to this, seeing that you got little fluctuations, ridden it all the way up to its current point. You see that it actually touched right here back in June, right? But again, you wait for confirmation. So we look at the candlesticks, and we get that, you start seeing this compression right here. And mind you, again, this is on the weekly. This is not on the daily. So there's, you're looking at a week's worth of data in each of these candlesticks, okay? And then coming up, and it continues to go up. But my point to you here is right here where we're coming to. See, we're seeing this kind of starting to compress right here, and I think we may be hitting an inflection point where I really have a strong suspicion that we truly are probably getting, if we're not there, we're getting close to a market top. I don't know if you've noticed all the negative news lately, but coming out of China, the Evergrande situation, Europe is in an energy crisis. Other places are in energy crisis. China's in an energy crisis. There's a lot of bad things that are going on behind the scenes that I think is creating a confluence that's going to more than likely cause some problems moving forward. Now, this is not why I'm shooting this video. I kind of wanted to show you what what's going on right now, right? Give you a little bit of an update in the markets. Let me show you what I found recently. Not that. Let's go. Hold on. All right. So I came across this document, and in the document you see this title: "The Great Reset is a Monetary Regime Change." Okay. I've been reading since the dot-com bubble, because that was the first real crash I ever went through. And I've been reading about monetary history and how markets work and the interconnectedness, and basically looking for timing bubbles and stuff like that. And I've had some success at it, had some failures. Thankfully, 2015, made the decision to dive into Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. One of the best decisions of my life. Little did I know or realize just how much those financial instruments were going to absorb the transfer of wealth that was coming, that was already in play, but that is accelerating even as we speak. So I'm sure you've noticed that we are dealing with a record amount of inflation now, right? In case you haven't gone outside and bought anything recently, automobiles are way more expensive now. Of course, there's supply chain issues that are contributing to that. I understand that. Housing is at an all-time high. Part of that is because material costs have gone up. I bought my house in the crisis last year. Okay, everybody ran for the doors. Housing dropped a tad. Managed to buy my house at a good price. I literally bought it right before the cost of lumbers and other materials started going sky high, and I barely missed that, but I capitalized on it, of course, through the appreciation of the house. Now I'm thankful for that, but that was pure dumb luck, quite honestly, and just the bravery to make a decision on that. And it's not happenstance that houses are going up the way that they are, and I'll go over that a little bit with you. Actually, what I'm going to show you, and quite honestly, I really encourage you to take a look at it yourself. I'm going to include links to this stuff, that you can get to. Some of it only members will be able to get to. So if you're interested in learning more and taking a deeper dive into these things, I encourage you to sign up with my advisory. There'll be links to that, and we're going to make it ultra affordable because I want to make sure that people have access to this at a reasonable cost. But some of it I'm going to provide for free for you guys, just honestly, just as a thank you for coming and looking at this stuff, and to help you out. So, but my point is that we are in an unprecedented time right here. We're going through a huge change wave that is absolutely going to affect your current living situation and your life as you know it moving forward. And there's two things that are going to happen, okay? One is either you're going to end up suffering tremendously through the loss of value that you're going to sustain in whatever assets or savings you have right now, right? Especially if you have most of your value, of your personal value, in dollar liquidity. Or you're going to benefit. You're going to get yourself positioned on the right side of this transfer of wealth, and you're going to benefit from the massive tsunami of wealth that has already started moving over and that will move over at an accelerated rate. And there's one thing I know about this stuff is you're far better off being early to the party than late, because unfortunately if you're late, sometimes the door closes and you can't get in, or it takes off so fast it's out of your financial reach. So you still have time to position yourself to capitalize on this tremendous change that's coming. Now, regardless of what you do, you're still going to take some losses because the government is stealing from you, and I'm going to show that to you. All right? So I'm going to come down here and let me see here. Let me show you what I found. Go to okay, this article, this section about hyperinflation, can it really happen? They talk about the Weimar Germany hyperinflation of 1919 to 1923. Look at this right here. This is a chart of the S&P 500, and you can see the multiple times that it actually almost crashed, and the Fed came in and kept injecting liquidity and just kept propping it up. And you see this one incident back here in March of 2020, where we realistically were actually going into a recession, and the Fed once again stepped in and bailed it out, right? So, okay, right here. One of the seminal accounts of hyperinflation is Jens O. Parsons' Dying of Money, Lessons of the German and American Inflations. All right? You can actually get physical copies of these at the Mises Institute, and they're online for free. So right here, where he talks about in one of his chapters, in the years leading up to the hyperinflationary event, there was a classic Austrian school crack-up boom. The stimulation of the government's easy money spread through virtually all levels of the German economy. The life of the inflation in its ripening stage was a paradox which had its own unmistakable characteristics. One was the great wealth, at least of those favored by the boom. Industry and business were going at a fever pitch. Great mansions of the new rich grew like mushrooms in the suburb. Does that sound a little familiar? Side by side with the wealth were pockets of poverty. Greater numbers of people remained on the outside of the easy money, looking in but not able to enter. What do we have now? We have more homelessness. We have working. Do you know that we have working homeless people? Do you know what that is? There are students that are going to school in California that don't have the money to live in the dorms. They live out of their car. There's a really good documentary on that. I'll find that and I'll also post that. But working homeless are people who actually work but can't afford a normal lifestyle. And so they're homeless. They don't have a home. Many of them live in cars. They live in tents. They live in substandard housing. All right? And we have more of that today than I've ever seen in my life. Almost any kind of business could make money. Business failures and bankruptcies became few. The boom suspended the normal process of natural selection by which the non-essential and ineffective otherwise would have been called out. Practically all of this vanished after the inflation blew itself out. Concentration of wealth in business was still another characteristic trend. That was how it was in the heyday of the boom, which was the ripening stage of the inflation. Inexorably, the inflation began to stalk the boom, meaning to kind of stoke it out. Any of that seem eerily familiar? This period went on for some years, from 1914 to 1922, and then the crack-up boom exhausts itself, and the account of the true hyperinflation starts. Now listen to this. The seas of marks, this is in Germany, so they had Deutschmarks. That's what he's talking about. Replace it with dollars, honestly. The seas of marks, dollars, which had been stored up, flooded forth and fought to buy other investments, foreign currencies, tangible goods, almost anything but dollars. America's money printing industry could not turn out enough trillions to keep up. States, towns, and companies got into the act by issuing their own emergency money. It was called Notgeld. Barter became prevalent. Still, money grew scarcer while prices continued to soar. Okay. So he goes on to say that this last line is of particular relevance to us. It foretells the same dynamic that's playing out today. And what he's talking about is every hyperinflationary event creates its own version of Notgeld, or people's money. People taking matters into their own hands and coming up with something else to use for money, even if they know full well it's temporary. Now here's some examples in history. In Zimbabwe, it was prepaid gas and phone cards. He says, at my company, which was EasyDNS, we once noticed a customer kept prepaying his account every week and not using any of the credits for his services. By the time he had a few $1,000s in there, I emailed him asking what on earth he was doing. Turns out he was in Argentina. Whenever he got paid, he immediately funded his account with us because pre-funding his EasyDNS account was a more stable and secure store of value than banking it in Argentinian pesos. No joke. All right? Then this is what he goes on to say. Bitcoin in particular and cryptocurrencies in general are the coming hyperinflationary events, not geld. All right? So you see, it's not a coincidence that Bitcoin came around in October of 2009. Do you know that in the Genesis block of Bitcoin, the pseudonymous creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, put a picture of the headline of the London Herald. And on that headline was a London bank, a very old one, that had collapsed because of the subprime loan crisis. And I don't remember, I think they got bailed out. Actually, I think they got bailed out. But he basically put in there, this is basically the solution to the government's never-ending money printing and stealing of wealth from the people. Satoshi designed Bitcoin to be out of the government's hands and in the people's hands. He wants it to be the people's money. All right. Now the reality is it's not going to be 100% that way. The government is already working on regulating it. They tax it like crazy if you take profits from it. But in the end of the day, that's all right. There's ways to minimize those taxes. There's ways to, the most important thing is getting your wealth out of their hands. All right. You do not want to keep all of your wealth in the bank, and I'm going to show you why that is. All right, let's go over here. And let me find this. All right, so I'm going to be talking about this right here in a little bit. This is, they wrote this article. There's an article titled, "Is there a backdoor method for the government to pay down the federal debt using private savings?" All right, and I'm going to show you that, and you're going to be welcome to read it on your own, but we'll come back to that. Let me go over to here. Okay, I want you to see this article. Man kills himself as bank failure wipes out savings. Okay, this happened in Italy. The death of a pensioner who killed himself after losing his life savings as a result of a controversial move by the government to rescue 4 banks has sparked outrage in Italy, with 2 consumer associations calling for a criminal case inquiry. 68-year-old hung himself at his home in I don't know how you pronounce that town. It's a port town near Rome, after the so-called Save Banks plan wiped out $100,000 in savings held at Banca Etruria, one of the 4 lenders included in the government rescue plan deal announced on November 22nd. So basically what they did was they They took this guy's savings and they bailed out the bank for mistakes the bank made. All right? This guy's savings, it probably took him his whole life to save this money. They took it from him, flip of a switch, and of course he killed himself. Because why wouldn't he? His life is over. He has no way of retiring. And I believe, yeah, this guy, this was his retirement savings. There are multiple stories about these types of incidences, and these have already happened. And this has yet to happen here, although it is happening slowly. Let me go into, all right, let's shut that down, whatever. All right, I want to talk about what happened in Cyprus back in 2012, 2013. All right, Cyprus ended up going into a financial crisis due in part because of the property crisis, the whole great financial crisis of 2008-9, right? That spilled over to them, and then there were some things that were going on behind the scenes with the banks. So what the European Union did is they went and, so at the time in Europe, in Cyprus, the limit of their version of FDIC insurance was 100,000 euros, just like ours was 100,000 US dollars, right? Which means that, you know, if a crisis happens, you're guaranteed that 100,000 euros of your money is protected. It's insured, it's protected theoretically, right, by the government. But what you have to understand is everything above and beyond that is a free-for-all. And what they did was they took 47.5% of all bank deposits above 100,000 euros to bail out these banks. So imagine that. You've got, let's say you have $1 million, million euros. In our case, $1 million. Anything above and beyond the ceiling of the FDIC insurance is free for all. Do you understand that when you put your money in your bank, that it becomes their liability? Do you understand that? You probably don't. Maybe you do. For some of you, it's probably rudimentary. For others of you, it's like, what? What are you talking about, right? So I worked in banking, by the way, so I learned this firsthand. But every business has a balance sheet, right? You have to account for everything. You have a ledger. And on one side of that ledger, you have assets. On the other side, you have expenses or liabilities, okay? And when you put money in your bank account, it goes in as an asset. And on the other side, in the bank's balance sheet, it comes in as a liability because you're lending your money to the bank when you put it in there, right? You may be saving it in your mind, but what you're truly doing is you're lending it to them, and that's why they pay you interest, although it's very small. In their mind, it's a loan. And then, of course, they take it and then they multiply it and they lend it out to other people and they earn more interest, and that's how they pay you your interest, right? By lending it out and earning more interest on other loans, okay? So they're putting your money at risk, but really not so much anymore because now the government prints up all this money and gives it to the bank as excess reserves. But when you come in and withdraw your money, you're calling in your loan, all right? Now here's the flip side. Have you ever filed bankruptcy? I have. In bankruptcy, you can liquidate you can default on all of your loans. You can basically wind up not owing anybody anything if you do like a Chapter 7, which is what I did at the time, although I still retain some of my loans. If a bank goes under due to a crisis of some kind, or if they make mistakes with their lending or their gambling in the stock markets, they can default on your savings and not have to give it back to you, other than the stuff that's insured up to the $250,000. So my point is, ideally you should not have more than $250,000 in an account, in any of your accounts. And you can do this over multiple accounts. So you can have $250,000 in savings, $250,000 in checking. You know, you can have another checking account, $250,000, You can have a certificate of deposit, 250, if that's what you want to do. Personally, I wouldn't recommend that. There are better ways to save your money. But yeah, they can come in and they can confiscate anything above and beyond that. And they've done it before. They did it in the Great Depression. It's only a matter of time before they do it again, honestly. And I think that time is coming up. But right now, they're doing something much more sneaky. They are actually stealing your money, but it looks like you get to keep it in your bank. And it actually kind of looks like you're making money because you're earning interest. And this is what they're doing. Okay, so there are 5 methods listed below are the four primary methods by which nations use in practice to pay down huge government debts when they have borrowed in their own currency. Which particular method the government chooses could end up being the #1 determinant of the value of your savings as well as your long-term financial security. #1, decades of austerity with higher taxes and lower government spending. Very ugly, very painful. All right. Greece kind of did this. Cyprus did it a little bit too. #2, defaulting on government debts. This is what Argentina did a couple of years ago, 2018. All right. Inflating away the value of the debt through rapidly slashing the value of the currency. Hyperinflation. All right. We actually don't have that, even though they're printing up a lot of currency. I'm going to show you what they're doing. Use 5 tools together to create a combination of very low interest rates and somewhat higher rates of inflation that effectively uses private savings to pay down public debts in a manner that is complex enough that the average voter never understands how it works, thus allowing the government to use this potent but subtle method of taking vast sums of private wealth year after year, decade after decade, with almost no political consequences. All right? This 4th method that nations use to control or reduce the real value of debt is a process which economists refer to as financial repression, and it is by far the least known or understood by the general public. Not coincidentally, it is also the most common method of national debt reduction that has been used in the modern era. So if the very low interest rates part of the recipe sounds familiar, it should. All right? So apparently the government did this before. They've done this once before, between 1945 and the early 1970s. Let me go back here, sorry. So they've employed this tool before. The US government got into an extreme amount of debt from World War II, and they needed to work that debt down, and they employed this technique. All right, they're doing it now, and it's probably even worse. What they've done is they've created inflation, and at first it was gradual, but it's picking up, and we're all feeling it even more so. But have you noticed that what you earn on your savings is paltry in the banks? All right, so much so that people are doing one of 2 things. They're either leaving it in the bank and getting robbed, or they're moving into riskier assets like bonds, stocks, and other things. Now, another way you can hedge against this is assets that inflate and absorb the money that's being printed to dilute the debt. Gold and silver, platinum, palladium, precious metals. Housing. Unfortunately, it is a great way to offset it. Stocks are a way to do it. A new one is cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency has actually produced the best return on investment since its invention. I think Bitcoin's gone up, how much? I mean, over 300,000%, if not more. Ethereum, same thing, maybe even 1,000,000%, you know? And they're going to keep going up because it is so easy to transfer wealth in and out of cryptocurrencies because of its decentralized nature and its purely electronic form. Now, people always ask, how does it have value? How does anything have value, people? We give it value. You assign a value in your mind based on how useful it is to you. So the more useful something becomes, the more valuable it becomes. How is Bitcoin valuable? Well, it's valuable through the process of what's called network effect. What is network effect? It means that the more people that adopt it and use it, the more other people are going to adopt it and use it, and it becomes an exponential growth curve, okay? Um, hmm, are there any other examples of this? Oh, yeah, some pretty recent ones. Anybody heard of the internet? Do you know that before 1995, maybe definitely less than 15% of people used the internet? I think it was way lower than that, actually. And then a company called Netscape came out with their browser. And after that, everything shot up and adoption went up exponentially. And now, pretty much everybody on the planet uses the internet for the most part, right? I mean, let's say 7 billion people on the planet. I don't know, let's say 6 billion use it. Okay, so that's, whatever percentage that is. It's pretty damn high, right? Uh, what's something else that has network effect? Cellular networks. Do you remember having a cell phone back in the 90s? I didn't. You know, I had maybe a pager, which makes me a dinosaur, but most people didn't have cell phones. Only really wealthy people or Wall Street business types had it. Then in the early 2000s, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, all these companies started expanding their networks and everybody got in on the game. Now almost everybody, probably everybody has a cell phone now. I mean, big network effect. 2003, little company called Facebook came about. Mark Zuckerberg. How many people are in that social network? 6 billion people? Or no, I'm sorry, 3 billion. 3 billion people are in that social network. Almost half the world's population. Pretty profound, huh? And that's just from 2003 to 2021. All right. Bitcoin is growing faster than that. Crypto is too. I don't mean to beat a dead horse into the ground, but if you haven't gotten into cryptocurrency, you need to take a hard look at it. You need to take a serious look at it. If you need help with that, please look around my websites, obviously my private groups and stuff like that. Like I said, I will be releasing a course on it, and I will be continue to release information for free through my Facebook, through my other social networking channels, and through especially YouTube for right now until I find a better platform for hosting these videos, which I think I may have found. But anyway, like I said, I'm going to attach links to some of these things so you guys can read more into this if you so choose to. I hope that this has helped enlighten you to what's coming. If you are a pensioner or you're going to be drawing a pension, you need to understand this very well because you guys right now are being raked over the coals. The government is borrowing your money on the cheap and creating new money around it so that when you draw your pension at a flat rate, so let's say when you retire, your pension payment is going to be $3,000 a month. Not bad, but you tell me, did that $3,000 a month buy more 10 years ago or today? 10 years ago, right? What do you think is going to happen in another 10 years? It's going to buy less. So your pension amount is not going to go up. That's going to drastically affect your lifestyle. You have to be able to offset that somehow. These various tools can do that, okay? All right. So anyways, thanks for taking a look at this video. I apologize for the length of it, but it was a lot of information I needed to cover. Let me know your thoughts. Reach out, if you have any questions or concerns. Give me feedback. I appreciate that. Let me know if there's things you'd like to learn more about. And like I said, please join my group and get access to even more detailed information. All right, take care, and I will be talking to you in another video soon.